Now when we talk about the mechanism of breathing, in breathing there are two steps mainly involved. First one is the inspiration, right? Second is the expiration. In inspiration, inhalation of atmospheric air in and drawn, right, and by expiration the alveolar air is released out, right? Clear? So the movement of air into and out of the lung is carried out by creating a pressure gradient, right? This is actually the question of pre-medical. The movement of air in and out of the lung is carried out by the pressure gradient which is between in the lungs and the atmosphere, right? Pressure gradient between the lungs and the atmosphere. If inside the lungs the intrapulmonary pressure is get reduced and atmospheric pressure is more as compared to it, then what will happen? We inhale the oxygen in case of inspiration, right? When we talk about the inspiration, what will happen? In case of inspiration, if the intrapulmonary, that means the pressure inside the lungs, intrapulmonary pressure is less, right, than the atmospheric pressure. Right, then the atmospheric pressure. So what will happen? To compensate the pressure or to equalize that pressure, we can say that intrapulmonary pressure is the negative pressure within the lungs with respect to the atmospheric pressure. So what will happen? We inhale the gas, right? We inhale the atmospheric air, clear? And same as that, in case of expiration or expiration or the exhalation, what will happen? The intrapulmonary pressure is more than atmospheric pressure. It is more than the atmospheric pressure, right? So in that case, what will happen? We exhale the extra amount of the air, right? And the specialized muscle which helps in the mechanism of breathing, that is the diaphragm. We already discussed it, right? Diaphragm and the external and internal intercostal muscles, right? In case of inspiration, what will happen? Diaphragm contracted, right? Or contraction of diaphragm contraction of diaphragm, right? So what will happen? It increases the thoracic volume, right? Thoracic volume, or we can say the, if I take the exact language of NCERT, then it increases the volume of thoracic chamber in the, this is the question of pre-medical, right? So memorize it properly. In the antero-posterior axis. Experience it. Take a breath, right? When you take a breath, what will happen in that case? Because the thoracic volume increases, na, that is the thoracic chamber, right? When air is drawn in, right? When air is drawn inside here, what will happen? The thoracic volume increases, so anterior level is also increased, and as well as it enhances the posterior level, na, right? That's why that word is used here, the antero-posterior axis, right? The antero-posterior axis. And what will happen in that case? In the case of inspiration, diaphragm is contracted, right? The movement of ribs and sternum is upward and outward, right? In case of inspiration, diaphragm contract and movement of ribs is upward and outward. That's why due to that movement, the thoracic chamber volume increases in the antero-posterior axis, right? Upward and outward. Clear? And same as that, when we talk about the exhalation or the expiration, what will happen? Diaphragm gets relaxed in state, right? So what will happen in that case? Diaphragm gets relaxed, right? And the movement of ribs and sternum downward and inward, right? It is downward and inward, right? So in that case, if we form a little bit summary of that, right? In case of normal respiration, the muscles are involved in the muscles which is involved, that is the diaphragm and the external intercostal muscle, right? What will happen? Contraction occur, right? In both, when both are contracted, then when the diaphragm contracted, the thoracic volume increases. When the external intercostal muscle contracted, then the volume of thoracic cavity is increases, right? Now what will happen in normal expiration? Diaphragm and external intercostal muscles both are in relaxed condition, and the volume of the thoracic cavity in both, that is it helps in the decrease the thoracic cavity volume, right? Now when we come to the forceful expiration, then in forceful expiration, internal intercostal muscles helps plays main role with additional muscles of the abdomen, right? With additional muscles of the abdomen, and both are in contracted state, right? And what will happen? It decreases the volume of thoracic cavity. Clear? Now come to the another important part of the respiration, that is the pulmonary one more thing, per minute, or we can say a normal human can breathe 12 to 16 cycles per minute, right? This is the exact line of the NCERT, and the pulmonary volumes and all these can be measured through the spirometer, right? It can be measured through the spirometer. Now, what are the pulmonary volumes? There are some volumes, like first one is the tidal volume, right? First one is the tidal volume. What is tidal volume? That is the volume of air inspired or expired during a normal respiration, right? It is called the tidal volume. That is when we inhale the air, the amount of air, that is 500 ml, is inhaled, that is tidal volume. Then exhale, 500 ml is also exhaled, that is the tidal volume, right? So that's why the amount of air which can be expired and inspired through a normal or by a normal respiration, that is called the tidal volume, right? Its value is 500 ml. Tidal volume is 500 ml, but when we talk about the per minute, so per minute it is approximately 6,000 to 8,000 ml per minute, right? Clear? Now come to the second one, that is inspiratory reserve volume, right? Inspiratory reserve volume. What will happen here? Reserve, that means to, if you have some extra amount of something or so, then we have to able to reserve it now, right? If we have deficient in that particular, so it is that amount is not we cannot reserve it, right, if it is less in amount. So simply, inspiratory reserve volume, that is the additional volume of air, right? That is the additional volume of air a person can inspire by a forcible inspiration. When we take a normal, then it's not excessive amount of air inhaled, but when we take a deep breath like that, right? So the additional volume of air other than the tidal volume which enters inside the lung, and that is called the inspiratory reserve volume other than that, right? And its value is approximately 2,500 to 3,000 ml, right? Now third is, in short, it is called the IRV. Come to the next, that is expiratory reserve volume, right? Expiratory reserve volume, what will happen in expiratory reserve volume? The additional amount of air a person can expire through a forcible expiration, like by the force, the whole maximum amount of air we can expel out, right? That is called the expiratory reserve volume, and its amount is approximately 1000 to 1100 ml, right? Now come to the fourth one, that is the residual volume. As its name suggests, residue, that means rest of, right? residue, that means the rest of, that means the volume of air remaining in the lungs after a forcible expiration. When I do that, what do you think? My lungs is completely emptied now? No, the amount of air is retained here, and that volume of air after a forcible expiration is called the residual volume, and its value is 1100 to 1200 ml, right? And there is one other volume also, which is called the dead space volume. Right, dead space volume. Actually, what will happen in that dead space volume? In dead space volume, that is the amount of air which cannot be participate in the gaseous exchange, right? It cannot be participate in the gaseous exchange, and it is about 150 ml, right? It's just about 150 ml. Now come to the respiratory capacity, pulmonary capacities, right? These pulmonary capacities is the sum of the pulmonary volume. Pulmonary capacities is the sum of the pulmonary volume. Two or more than two pulmonary volumes make the pulmonary capacity. First one is the IC, that is inspiratory capacity, right? Inspiratory capacity, that is the total volume of air, or total volume of air a person can inspire after a normal expiration, right? सांस छोड़ी and जितना अमाउंट ऑफ एयर उसके बाद आफ्टर दैट द अमाउंट ऑफ एयर वी कैन इनहेल, दैट इज कॉल्ड द इंस्पायरेटरी कैपेसिटी, एंड दैट इज द सम ऑफ द टीवी एंड IRV, right? In short, tidal volume is known as TV, IRV inspiratory reserve volume, ERV expiratory reserve volume, RV that is residual volume, right? So that is TV, tidal volume, IRV. When we calculate it, so what value is there? If we take minimum, right, that is 500 and minimum 20, so it is 3000 to 3500 ml, right? Next is expiratory capacity, right? What is expiratory capacity? That is the total volume of air a person can expire after a normal inspiration, right? Normal inspiration, that is, it includes the TV plus ERV, right? When we calculated 500 plus the value of ERV is 1000 to 1100 ml, right? See here, 1000 to 1100 ml. So what will happen? 1000 to 1100 ml, that means its range is 1500 to 1600 ml, right? We can count it like that. Now come to the FRC, that is functional residual capacity. It's important actually, right? And the question which is asked on the pulmonary capacity is asked through in the form of formulas also. That's why I told you the formulas also here, right? When we talk about the FRC, that is the volume of air, right? Volume of air that will remain in the lung after a normal expiration, right? The volume of air remain in the lung after a normal expiration. So it includes the ERV plus RV, right? That is the functional residual capacity. So when we count it, we know that RV is the 1100 to 1200 ml and ERV is 1000 to 1100. So when we count it, that is 2100 to 2300 ml approximately, right? Now come to the vital capacity. Vital capacity, that is the maximum volume of air a person can breathe in after a forcible expiration. Its definition is having some technically uh, tricks, right? So see here what I say in first, that is maximum volume of air a person can breathe in, right? A person can breathe in after a forced expiration, right? And same as that, another definition is here, that is the maximum volume of air a person can breathe out after a forced inspiration, right? Both are the definitions of the vital capacity, but here breath in after forced expiration, here breath out after forced inspiration, right? So what is the formula of VC, that is vital capacity? VC is sum of the TV plus IRV plus ERV, right? This is the formula. Now come to the next, that is total lung capacity, that is TLC, right? What is total lung capacity? That is the total volumes of air accommodated in the lungs at the end of the forced inspiration, right? That is called the TLC, and we can say that is the sum of the RV plus TV plus IRV plus ERV, sum of the all kind of volumes. And we can see here VC equals to TV plus IRV plus ERV, so TV plus IRV plus ERV, so we can write it like RV plus VC. Yes, TLC equals to RV plus VC. Clear? That is, so these are the capacities, right? And on the basis of these formulas, the question asked from this chapter. This is the pulmonary volumes and the capacity graphs, and on the basis of that graph, question is asked with this graph from us, right? From in the exam, previous year's exams. See that is the RV, that is the residual volume, ERV, TV, and this is IRV, right? On the basis of the volumes, we divide these regions, right? Because IRV is 2500 to 3000 ml, then it carries the maximum space right after that. So simply, when we talk about the FRC, so FRC is the it is the sum of the ERV plus RV, na? Right? That's why ERV plus RV, that is FRC. Clear? When we talk about that, it is the maximum inspiration, that is the peak of maximum inspiration, right? And This one is the maximum expiration, right? Clear? Now what will happen? This is called, it is called the IC, that is inspiratory capacity, which is the sum of the IRV plus TV, right? IRV plus TV. And this one is the VC, that is vital capacity, TV plus IRV plus ERV. You can see TV plus IRV plus ERV, that is VC, right? And when we talk about the TLC, we know that TLC is the sum of all the, right? All. That's why, see, TLC, that is total lung capacity, that is the sum of the TV plus IRV plus ERV plus that means all volume, right? But here we can write it VC plus RV, right? So VC, that is vital capacity, is up to, right? So simply this all this is called the TLC, the total lung capacity. So these are asked in previous year exam. Now come to the gaseous exchange, right? We know that the alveolar surface is the primary site of the gaseous exchange, right? And the gaseous exchange depends upon the solubility as well as the thickness of the membrane, right? We'll talk about now the exchange of gases right? We know that alveoli primary site of gaseous exchange, right? Primary site for the gaseous exchange, and exchange of gases occur between the blood and the tissues, right? So oxygen and the carbon dioxide gaseous exchange occurs at that site, which is it occurs at that site by the simple diffusion, which is based on the gaseous exchange based on the pressure gradient. It is the question of pre-medical. Pressure gradient, or which is also known as the concentration gradient, right? The gaseous exchange depends upon the pressure gradient and the concentration gradient, as well as the solubility of gases depends upon the thickness of the membrane also, right? This is the line of NCERT actually, and the question asked in that, the solubility of gases as well as thickness of membranes involved in the diffusion, right? Now there are some important factors which can affect the rate of the diffusion, right? Now come to the partial pressure. So what is that partial pressure? In short, it is PP, that is partial pressure. The each gas in the mixture of the gases exerts a pressure, right? Exerts a part pressure according to that according to the concentration, or we can say that it's the part of the total pressure to its concentration, right? This is called the partial pressure. When we represent the partial pressure of oxygen, then it represents as PO2. When we represent the partial pressure of carbon dioxide, then it represents as PCO2, right? So in NCERT, a chart is given of the partial pressure, right? The gases, inspired air, alveolar air, venous blood, that is deoxygenated blood, arterial blood, that is oxygenated blood, expired air, right? And at the level of tissues. All these values are measured in mm of Hg, right? So when we talk about the oxygen total amount, partial pressure of oxygen in inspired air, that is 159 mm of Hg, right? The unit is mm of Hg. In alveolar air, it's 104, right? In venous blood 40, in arterial blood 95, in expired air 116, and at the level of tissue it's 40. When we talk about the carbon dioxide partial pressure, so in inspired air 0.3, in alveolar air 40, in venous blood 45, in arterial blood again 40, in expired air 32, and at the level of tissue the partial pressure is 45, right? So this is called the partial pressure, right? In NCERT, a diagram is given to show its partial pressure. We discuss it with the help of the question, right? As we say that the solubility of the gaseous exchange depends upon the solubility as well. So solubility of the carbon dioxide is 20 to 25 times higher than that of the oxygen. We know that, right? The amount of or we can say that the diffusion membrane, right? It is the question related with the diffusion membrane. That diffusion membrane is made up of three structures, right? And the thickness of that diffusion membrane is less than a millimeter, right? Its the thickness is less than a millimeter. The diffusion membrane, its diagram is it is described by a diagram in NCERT. We will discuss in the form of question, right? Further, so see it. There are three membranes. First, three layers. First is the thin squamous epithelium of alveoli, right? The endothelium of alveolar capillaries, right? And the third one is basement substances in between them, right? Basement substances in between them, and the thickness of diffusion membrane is less than a millimeter, right? So memorize it properly. It is asked in the form of options as well as the diagram based questions, right?